Hello. Today I'd like to talk to you about this. Now this is a Nixie clock. So I've wanted one of these for ages, and last year I bought myself one. So if you have any sort of passing interest in Nixie clocks, you've probably browsed eBay and just done a general search for Nixie clock or Nixie Tube clock or something like that. I think they grew in popularity quite a bit when one appeared in Wednesday on Netflix, but I've sort of known about them for a while, as have most in the steampunk community. So yeah, last year I decided to get myself one of these and browsed eBay. Now, if you browse eBay, you'll see there's an enormous range in price, and that is generally because there's enormous variety in what's available. So at sort of about the £30 to £50 mark, you get kits without tubes. So that is literally just the circuit board and drivers. Then around sort of the £100 mark, you start to see some kits including tubes. Now, bizarrely, around the sort of £50 to £70 mark, you also get what they call single tube clocks, which I don't quite understand how they work. Not been something I've ever been particularly interested in. Then there seems to be a big jump to sort of ready-made ones at about the £250 to £300 mark. Then you get into what I would describe as exotic Nixie clocks, where they are made with sort of other rarefied components, and they tend to be in the sort of anywhere from sort of 400 up to about £1,000. Now, you will pay more for more tubes, so this is a 4-tube clock. You could also get 6-tube clocks. 6-tube clocks are always going to be more expensive than 4-tube clocks. Now, the one I got, this one here, was, I believe I paid £150 for it, and there was a few at that price. They all had something in common, which is that they all were 4-tube clocks, and they all shipped ready-made direct from Ukraine. Now, you'll find most of these come from that part of the world, and that is because the majority of Nixie tubes that exist today were made by the USSR. So the Soviet Union seems to keep using Nixie tubes long after they'd sort of fallen out of favour and been discontinued in the West. Saying that, you do occasionally find Western devices with Nixie tubes in them. I've actually got one downstairs, which I might show on a future video if people are interested. Might have to wait a bit because I don't actually know what it is. I bought it second-hand from an electrical junk shop. Now, if I just spin these round, you can tell that these Nixie tubes came from the USSR based on what's said on the back of them. Also on the back of this, you can see the 3 buttons at the bottom, which are to set the time, the day of the week, the alarms, and the various backlight options. Now, I've got the backlight turned off because, yeah, I mean, I did have it on at one point, but to be honest, if you are paying for Nixie tubes, to me, I want to see the Nixie tube glow, not the glow of cheap RGB LEDs, which is really what you get if you're turning the backlight on, in my opinion. But yeah, this is a £150 Ukrainian-made Nixie clock, and I have regrets about buying this. So the first thing to say with this is when it arrived, the first thing I noticed was that it came with the tubes in. Now, that's fair enough. A lot of them do come with the tubes in. The problem is that this one was advertised as having socketed tubes. Now, I specifically wanted one with socketed tubes because it means that if the tubes were to fail, one of the tubes were to fail, you can buy replacement tubes and it would just be plugging in a replacement tube. These are not socketed tubes, these tubes are soldered onto the board. They cannot be removed other than by desoldering them. I mean, I could desolder one if they were to fail, but it's, well, I say that, I'll get to that in a minute. That is a bit of a pain, let's just say. Now, the second thing that was advertised in the listing, which is a little bizarre, is the fact that you can only set the minutes to the nearest 2 minutes. Now, I'm not quite sure why. There's something in the circuitry which only allows you to set the minutes to the nearest 2 minutes. What it didn't tell me was that you can also only set the hours to the nearest 2 hours. And you can't simply lap the minutes over at 59 to get to the next hour. It doesn't work like that because you set the minutes and the hours separately. Now, that creates a bit of a pain when it comes to adjusting this to British summertime. So, I received this from Ukraine in January last year, and obviously come March I needed to put it onto British summertime. So, when it came to that point, went to change it, realised you couldn't do that. You can actually do it, but you have to be sort of think about it. So what you have to do is basically wait until it's just gone to a new hour, then run the minutes all the way to 59 or 58 because you can only set the nearest 2 minutes, let it go to the next hour, and then you've got it there, and then you can set the minutes to what you want. It's a pain, and I don't know why it's set up like that. The bigger problem with this is that it is hideously inaccurate. It loses at least 5 minutes a month on the time. I have actually corrected it today to be more or less the right time for when I'm filming this. I say more or less because you can only set to the nearest 2 minutes. But yeah, it loses 5 minutes a month. I've no idea how that's even possible. I can only assume that this uses some sort of ex-USSR new old stock quartz timing crystal as well that is not particularly accurate. It doesn't use grid frequency because it's a DC power supply, so it's not anything like that. Now, the other side to this is that it also has a backup battery for the clock. The backup battery in this has failed, or has failed to some extent, because it now doesn't, when you turn this off, it doesn't hold the time, it holds the last time it was when it was on, which is completely and utterly pointless. It did used to hold the correct time, but it doesn't do that anymore, so I can only assume the backup battery is failing. I can't change the backup battery because the case is glued shut. Why is the case glued shut? Good question. I don't know. So, my opinion, yes, you can buy a Nixie Tube clock direct from Ukraine for about £150. Should you? No. Just don't. You are, in my opinion now, you either have to spend the sort of £300 to get one that's properly made, or you have to buy a kit and make it yourself. I didn't buy the kit and make it yourself because I don't like the idea of messing around with the sort of voltages Nixie Tubes run on, because that's the other thing. If you don't know, these run at, I believe it's between 100 and 300 volts DC, so it's not the kind of thing you really want to be messing with. Saying that, I am more confident at doing that now. I would probably build a kit of one of these if I was ever to do one in the future. But anyway, I've been Barcroft Laboratories. Thank you very much for watching.